Hello, true art believers. This is Pearson here, and today is what is it? Oh, I totally forgot. Jason, I already forgot. It's the artist interview series, and today we have guest artist Jason Bly. Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. As far as days are concerned, this is as productive as I've ever been. Well, yeah, it's as productive as I've ever been. Normally I have a noon nap. Do you ever have a noon nap? You ever take a nap at noon?
Yeah, maybe not at noon, but 3 or 4 o'clock it hits. Because I look at the cats. Sometimes I'll come home and have like a break, and I'll look at the cats and I'm thinking, they're doing that.
I should be doing that.
What makes them special? They're up on their cat tower. If I had a cat tower, that'd be me. 3 or 4 o'clock, cat nap.
Do you cat nap at all, or you just imagine that you're cat napping?
I've never imagined. I just kind of I doze off.
Into a lazy boy
cat position when I'm
you get in a cat position?
No, I don't.
Oh, no, you don't?
No.
Oh, by the way, Jason, aside from being very appreciative of you coming down tonight and taking some time out of your day to speak with me, you have some fantastic paintings behind you.
Oh, thank you.
They are top notch. What would be a superlative? You got any other words for it? Is superlative a good word for it?
Let's go with that. Maybe top notch is good.
Top notch.
I'm sure we'll think of more, but I try to keep humble.
Yeah. You ever get any? What are some compliments you've received when you have an art show or when you're working or whatever?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because sometimes I like to walk around and not let people know who I am, and and sometimes I can get better in feedback. I really like hearing what people have to say to each other, because the conversation changes once they know I'm the artist and they start talking to me, and I just find there's more depth about the work when they're conversing and they're like, oh, do you think it means this, and do you think it means that, and or how is that made? And I guess for me, I'm more interested in hearing others. I would rather have your mustache and your hat, and I would kind of walk in and incognito. So I don't know. I just feel like compliments are good. I think it's great to take your victories, but I just find much more interesting and good feelings about hearing others say it without having me to be there. Because then they feel they need to.
Yeah. Did you ever when you were snooping around? Did you ever get this stuff is garbage? I absolutely think it's terrible. Get this out of here.
Maybe not that.
But something.
But people kind of walk in and walk out. There's worse than getting a bad compliment is having someone completely bored.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You ever had bored person?
They don't mean, if someone walks in and they don't have a bad feeling, you haven't affected them. But if they walk in and they feel like, oh, I kind of feel like I feel something really human about this, and it happens to be negative, maybe that's better than them having apathy. Apathy is the worst thing. Just walking by. I did have a show, and it was a number of years back, and it was one that was podcast. So there's video being shown of the gallery, but I wasn't there, and I was watching that. But they didn't have a mic hooked up, so I was just looking at gestures. People do the art face, the art face, and they're talking about work, and then they're kind of moving on. And I kind of wondered through their body language what it was that they were saying about my work, and I couldn't. I'm not good enough about lessons in being a mime to know what it means to be really excited with your hands or not.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of people walking by. Yeah. But thank you for the compliment. So it's very nice of you, Matt.
Yeah, they're fantastic. What was I gonna say? often when I go to the like galleries, and like they're like places of social gatherings and networking.
Mhm.
I I never utilized that. I was often that person that would. I was kind of like you in a sense where instead of observing, I'd go up to the art and my nose would be right next to it, and I was just more curious of how they constructed
Right.
the layers or how they made that painting. And I would think about it, or how they made said artwork, and I just think about like, okay, oh, and then sometimes I'd be the only person like putting their head near the edge of the canvas so you can see, maybe if I can see past the corner a little bit, I can see maybe the little bit of underpainting, or a little bit of something to show me like how they began that painting. And
You're like an
obvious
archaeologist then, like
like, yeah,
going
I was like the only one there, and then after I would do that, I just leave. I was like, everyone else is chatting up. I was like, man, I was more interested in how it's constructed or made, and I'm not necessarily about the symbolism or the meaning behind it. I don't That interested me more. So since we already kind of like spoken about it, we talked about it. Um, you obviously have a very strong grasp of art techniques, like academic and like classical and commercial, um, through multiple conversations and dialogues between me and you. Like, you express certain things that strategies that you've done in the past.
like,
What are some of the things that you're doing now, and what are some of the things that you've done in the past, and how did they work? How did they not work? What were like some failures, some successes that you had?
mhm. Um, yeah, so maybe I'll kind of back up pretty far. I had an
Yeah,
interest
back up.
in art, coming out of high school. I think technique, craft, being able to see one thing and then put it onto a page, that really captivated me. Like, how can you take that all the things that you see and then make it something that is made by your hands? And I think traditional painting, knowing that history, and how that's got that kind of brought us to the present. We are in the present because of everything in the past, and to acknowledge that, not to look it over. So a lot of my background was kind of just really eating that information up. Like, oh, what did this artist do, and what did he or she bring into that big family tree that we can call art now. Um, so I remember asking a lot of questions of like, okay, well, there's this color in this painting. What's underneath that? And then what's underneath that? And what's underneath that? I remember being at the museum and talking to some professors who were kind of showing these paintings broke, and talking about how the light was passing through the paint. And what we see is not one color, but it's that accumulation.
Hmm.
So I guess, as we talk about origin stories, it's that there's that interest that's always been there, and then we get into the present, and then I start to get a beat on what's happening now, and how can those two worlds meet. So, in terms of strategy, I love using a brush. I use traditional methods. I use linseed oil. I use Gamblin paint. I really like a lot. Winsor Newton to some degree. But I like what it's able to do because it's hard to do it. And that's kind of the driving force. But talking about some new things I've been doing, I've been complementing that with using a silhouette cutter. And that's been happening the last year and a half, using silhouette cutter to help some of the edges. Because for a long time, I would do that very carefully. Maybe there's like a stubbornness behind it, but can I make this feel mechanical with a brush?
Hmm.
And I did, and I still do, but there might be some areas where I'm going to still do that, but I'll also use a vinyl cut as a stencil. And I use Photoshop. I've gotten into that for a long time, but more recently been using Procreate. Not to make these, but as a way of sketching. So I guess going back to your question, if we talk about strategies, there's that mystique of the work. Like, I want these to be paintings in their final form, but everything leading up to it, I want to use every tool that I can. So I'll make 3D models. This one behind me, whoops, this way. I did that original sketch a few times, just drawing it out, and it was a bit of a struggle. So I had to also go into Google SketchUp, and I made this 3D model that I can rotate, and then I can find the most interesting point of view, and then I would draw from that. So you find every tool that you can. But there are some bad things that happen along the way. I've had some paintings where, you lift up the tape and 3 months of work comes with it. And you have to look at it and be like, well, how can I hide what I've just done? Because that was a very fallible human moment. So you learn how to cover it. You learn how to be a restorationist, which I think is kind of how I think of it, is like you build your work, but then bad stuff will happen. Being humans, we're more liable to make mistakes than we're to make success the first time around.
Yeah.
So yeah, lifting up that tape, whenever that does happen, it's like, well, I need to find how to get that back so it never appeared like it happened.
Yeah. So
yeah.
How often has that happened when you use the tape to create it? I'm assuming you use tape to create a hard edge,
right,
on something.
To protect something, yeah, to create a hard edge.
How often has that happened where you peeled it off,
right,
and you lost a lot? I've had that happen, and it was, oh gosh, all sorts of emotions came abound.
Yeah. Do you get really loud or angry? Because I just get silent. I look at it like I'm really disappointed but I'm really disappointed in myself. Like I'm just like I know I can't say anything to make it better. I'm just like, I just go silent and I look at it and I think, well, that's gonna take me a minute to get that.
I think my best example would be like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Danny DeVito. Is it Danny DeVito? It's Danny DeVito.
Yeah, he's in it.
Where he rants and raves,
You're that.
So I would rant and rave, and I'd go in like a third person conversation with myself. That type of.
Matt, how could you do that? Is what
like this is with a lot of cussing, like way too many.
Yeah.
Like neighbors should be calling people right now because it's so loud. I
could try that sometime though.
Yeah, it's disheartening. It's soul crushing at times. I've had happen a lot, but I didn't do a lot of hard edges. I haven't made a lot of hard edges. So, can you tell me, like, I had to go through some like research or at least some sort of study on how to repair such things. You really can't. It's hard to like Google it because you really can't find the specific words.
Mm-hmm.
Like Google. What to do when you are doing a fine art painting and you peel off tape and it peels off 3 months of paint from it. They're like, they don't know what to do with that, right? I don't know how to Google search that. But what have you done?
They'll try to sell you something from Dick Blick.
Here is this.
Did you mean by this? Are you looking for artist tape? I don't know. That's what I mean. Is like it's trial and error. Because it'll lift up and you have to find a way, but then you have to think, well, what's underneath that and how did I get there? So I put down gesso and then I start to layer up and I get somewhat of a flat surface, but it's like spackling, like if you ever, think about the damages that might happen to a house. It's like that kind of level of repair where we're like, oh, I need to put this on before I do this and I do this and I do this. So that's kind of my thought process is, I can't go for the immediate, but also I know that I could mix colors accurate enough.
Yeah.
More than 10 or 15 years back, it's like that. That's where maybe direct color mixing comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting too because sometimes it changes the idea. There's some of my work, not this one, but maybe like this piece. It's got some decay around the edges. Mm-hmm. And I painted that in because I was kind of fascinated by what it would look like to have new things next to old. And so I Not that this one was one that got beat up or I had to repair, but I
Hmm.
remember looking at some that did need some repair, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. What if I do that on purpose? What
Yeah.
if I paint that to look like it's got some age to it? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's where I kind of look for the silver lining is that stuff happened, and it sucks when you have to do some touch ups,
And it leads
but
you.
maybe you get to see something new. Yeah.
Yeah, it leads you to something new. It leads you to new ideas, right?
Yeah. It doesn't happen too often. It's just it it it's one where it does happen every once in a while, maybe every three paintings, I guess you can say. But I've gotten more careful about preventing that. You know, like putting tape on my jeans before I put it on the board, or using a different kind of tape. Um, so I'm keeping track of not letting that happen if I can.
What tape are you like? Do you recommend? Like, cause
Yeah.
I always I recommend a list to all my students, and I was like, they're gonna work consistent, but they're not always gonna be safe. There's no guarantee that this special tape that I recommend that I've had a lot of experience with is going to prevent X or Y or
Yeah.
what do you use?
There's a frog tape is
Frog tape.
frog tape. It's green,
Yeah.
as it implies. Uh, and that's one that you can get. I think it's maybe at the hardware store.
Yeah.
I like using vinyl or vinyl sheets now, and then I'll save my scraps if I needed to still use some, I guess, freeform shapes.
What's a
Uh,
vinyl sheet? This
like
is like
for Cricut, yeah, for like a Cricut or equivalent of. Um, so vinyl sheets that would be, they have a little bit of a sharper edge to them. They
uh-huh.
come in 12 by 12 sheets, but you can also buy vinyl. Uh, vinyl, um, I think it's called stripe tape.
Hmm.
Uh, as a common name, that's not a brand name, but it's used for a sort of like pinstriping for automobiles.
And they're stickers, like a vinyl adhesive.
Yeah, so it comes in tape form, but I usually use it in the 12 by 12 sheets because I'm cutting things out with
Uh-huh.
um, the silhouette or the vinyl cutter.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like this. I got one. One second. It's this is the transfer tape, but it gives you an idea what the paper would look like. And this
Okay.
runs through the machine and cuts out the shapes I need. Yeah, and that runs for like I don't know, like $1 or two a sheet. But any of the scraps that I have, I hold on to those because they're still useful.
Yeah.
I just put them on. Yeah.
And how in this process, how long do you say you spend in like Photoshop or Procreate, like manipulating your forms?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, Going back, I used to pre-make the idea almost 100%. So
Okay.
back like when I was in grad school, I would be painting in the studio, and then I would do my Photoshop at home, and I would try to think of, okay, here's my design, and I'm going to manipulate this. And once I feel like it's good, I would make a painting that looked like that Photoshop design. Now I don't try to have that much control early on. So I do like a flat color, knowing I just want to put down like that gradient. And then once I
Hmm.
get that gradient down, then I can think about what's going to go on top of that. So I'll do more drawings. So I'll take a photo of it and draw on top of it. But I've been doing a lot of drawings in Procreate because it allows me to find like a history, and I can change things out pretty easily. Um, so I don't know, maybe like an hour or two, but it's stretched out throughout the duration of the project. And some
Hmm.
paintings require more of that
Yeah.
guess and check models. It's hard to say. That's a good question. I'm going to have to start recording how much I do because you don't keep track. I think at some
Yeah.
point, as an artist,
You,
um, you think, oh, I spent 6 hours, or I spent 8 hours, or 12 hours in the studio. But if you can get past that idea of a number, it's more like how many records did I listen to, or
Mhm.
how many shows were streaming, how many Netflix things did I get through
Yeah.
as well.
Like I find one of the challenges. I don't know if you have this problem, but like I, I haven't made like a design or like a painted design on Photoshop for quite some time, but I find it become incredibly micro, uh, and and uh, and become kind of locked to being so rigid in my idea that I spend hours just playing. Like, let's say I have a color purple, I'll like I want it purple, but I'll just spend hours just looking at like just various purples, and then I'll eventually go back to the first one, you know,
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like that. That's like just the most mundane stuff. Like I don't think big picture with my painting. I think when I have the opportunity to go micro, which is I will go micro like more than necessary. Do you ever have that kind of problem when you're working on a design with Procreate and Photoshop?
yeah. Sometimes. So the question is, when you say micro, do you mean like you're working on a smaller piece compared to like a bigger piece, or do you
I
mean as far as
I
abs-
start focusing on details that do not really matter in the grand scheme of things
but
of
they
the
all
painting.
matter?
So like your gradient of pink back there, I would play around with it forever and ever, and I probably wouldn't get the gradient pink that I wanted, and then I just scrap it or something like that. I don't know. I can't give you a good example, although it would be like, um, here's an example. I spent 2 hours uh, figuring out what color I wanted to sign my signature. Like things that like it doesn't matter, but I'm like, I like this, but I like this color. Do you ever do something like that?
Yeah, Procreate's good for that because you could wipe it away really easy if you're not happy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I will. Can I show you something real quick?
Yes,
That's
by all
along
means.
those lines. Ugh, I gotta reach. Um, I have this um, one of these.
Okay.
These are cool because I could look at like a color, and I do that where I write down what color I want to have. So that one behind me, I was kind of thinking of I don't know where it was in this whole book, but I write down the code, and they have a name to them. So like this one says, um, this is quiet blue.
Quiet blue.
Quiet blue.
Yeah.
This is blue stemware
Uh-huh.
and blue symmetry. So I'll write down the number, not the name, because the names are just silly. But I'll write down the number of the color, and when I mix my colors, I have something I can use my palette knife, and I hold it on front of that.
Hmm.
Because when you try to do that with the screen, Procreate, it's like you got too much light coming back at you. And
It distorts it.
yeah, so what I might do is I might decide what the color is in Photoshop or Procreate, and then I'll find the equivalent of it in, color aid paper or a card like this.
Do you tube any of your paints that you mix?
I don't. Thought about it, but by the time I would get to that point that I need that much of it, I end up getting past that point of needing it again because I like I'll mix them for the day. I did do it for one painting, and it was simply because it had so much of one color in it that I had to return back to that. But
Yeah.
generally, if I'll be reworking an area, I just mix the same color again, the best I can.
Yeah. So Jason, I think I spoke with you, and you gave me kind of like a timeline of how long it takes you to do a painting. Um, give paint a visual picture to the people that are listening and watching, like the tremendous amount of hours or time and labor that you spend from like beginning, like literally like developing your idea, like Photoshop, um, looking up color swatches, preparing your surface, all the way to the end. Like, how much time do you think you invest into one piece?
See, all this is making me feel like I need a punch card or something because
You might.
I'm not going to keep track.
I know.
So let me preface this that it's not where some artists are studio artists and they'll do that and they don't have their day job.
Yeah.
my day job is I'm teach at university. So all the painting that happens is going to be like in between that, weekends. Summers are really good for that reason, because there's not going to be as many other things happening throughout the day, that is. So I'll work on multiples at a time. I think that's really good to mention too. So I might have a couple of these, like 5-inch guys. And so I'll have a few of those going, and while that paint is drying, I got 2 others I might be doing some detail work on. So a lot of the early work happens where I'm formulating the idea, but I'm also preparing the surfaces, putting down gesso, and then I use sandpaper and razor blades to get the surface as smooth as possible.
Razor blades?
Oh yeah, razor blades. So I'll squeegee in oil paint after the gesso's down. And so imagine if your gesso surface is kind of bumpy.
Bumpy, yeah.
Yeah, that's going on. Then if you were to put down some oil paint on top of it, then you can squeegee that in with a razor blade or another flat device, and it pushes the oil paint into the bumps while also keeping the the high point of where the gesso is at. So yeah, I'm using it like an oil primer, but I'm pushing cracks while simultaneously pulling off the excess paint.
Wow, I've never thought about that. That's pretty cool. Don't you work?
It's just think about wall repair.
It's what?
It's just like wall repair.
Wall repair.
You put on some spackle and then you scrape it around.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just like
interesting.
that, but on a really OCD small 1-inch by 1-inch area.
And then, do you have problems with the paint adhering to the surface if it's too smooth?
Sometimes, yeah, that's a good question. Because then I'll use some rollers and brayers for printmaking, and I'll kind of get a little bit of surface back from that, but overall it's pretty smooth. Yeah. Like I listen to it. I listen to how the razor blade sounds when it's pulling paint across, and if it makes no sound at all, it means that's really smooth. But if it makes that kind of that low hum that you would get, that's when I know it has a little bit more of a textured area. So I kind of turn down the music and fans, and then as I'm pulling that paint through, I can listen to and see where the spots are that are more rough versus those.
Yeah. What's that piece that you showed there? That's wood panel?
Yeah, it's just on a wood panel, masonite board. Yeah, for sure.
Show it.
Yeah,
I see it. So when you sent me those photos for promotions, that painting feels to me like it would be an 18 by 24 inch. Like it's the way that it projects on the screen, like it just demands that presence. It feels like it's a larger painting than it really is. Tell us about that one a little bit.
Yeah. So I like working small, along with working. At this point, probably the largest is about 3 foot by 3 foot.
Yeah.
So somewhere in between the 5-inch 5 by 7 versus those 3 foot pieces. But I like that I'm able to put into something small and intimate what feels like still a coherent story or an idea. So I guess the basis for a lot of the work, not to talk about this one, but I like the interaction between the smooth, what feels like it's manufactured, and those that feel like you're more like objects that you can touch.
Yeah.
And then you have the manufactured being like the photographic rendering.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm interested in that tension that happens between all three, and then I think a lot about storytelling that is more metatextual, where not only are we looking at a thing, we have people inside the painting looking at a thing.
Yeah.
And so there's these different levels of what is the foreground, what's the background, how does the painting identify as an object, but also like a space. It's like a window at the same time. So I kind of like playing that game where I create something that's spatial, like a landscape, and then I try to pull things back on top of it that are negating that space.
Yeah.
That remind us that this thing is not as deep as we think it looks like. But I guess the story taking place is there's this 1950, like you could call like Leave It to Beaver. The when we thought of like Americana, it strikes a chord with this 1950s, 1960s television watching. And it's a discussion between two people who are describing the clown that they see on TV. And is this person fiction, or is it someone who is truth, to the point that it's truth to be feared or revered? And it's just that dialogue that happens between when you see something for the first time on television, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
And then
what's the back look like?
At the top, yeah.
What's the back look like?
Oh, the back? Yeah.
I think we talked about.
So I've been painting the sides, kind of like a charcoal gray.
And you got D-rings there?
Yeah, D-rings on it.
What's that kind of wood is that?
This is a poplar. I've been using poplar.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a harder wood, isn't it?
Depends on the grade, yeah. But it's I've been using quality pine or poplar for the backs. But masonite, and then I'll sand it down and so it can accept the gesso.
So tell me about because I see this a lot in many of your works, was like you have those positive negative space shapes in the background. Are they from something? Are they distorted from something? Or are they just imaginary? Or like, can you explain that a little bit? Like that one looks like an octopus, or like some sort of Cthulhu type tent.
So yeah, this is the shape. The shape came from a image of a sea creature that was taking over a ship. And
okay.
So I became interested in this imaginary, but it's born out of reality.
Okay.
But I thought about making. I don't know what I felt was. I wanted to find a shape that felt like a weird television signal, kind of like radiating off of this. That you see, and then I wanted to kind of give these figures something that they can interact with, like the string is coming down. So, do you remember that game Mousetrap from the 80s? Oh, that game! I mean, it changed my life because I would set that up.
Change your life?
I don't know, but I would set it up, and I would crank the thing, and I would watch all the parts move, and then the mousetrap would fall on the mouse at the end. But I thought about like how in a painting, if something feels like if you were to do one action, it would start to cause this series of other actions. So I like adding string or other devices that feels like you can like grab it and something would start to like unravel, I guess.
Do you know what the definition of that, what that word is? I get the idea from like Pee Wee Herman, where they have those useless things that do like one action. There's a name for that.
Rube Goldberg.
Goldberg?
Rube Goldberg. He was a cartoonist, and he would draw those out, and they became known as Rube Goldberg machines, like the intro to the Jetsons.
Okay.
Like there's all these parts, and in the end, it like makes a like an egg flip over, and you get breakfast.
Okay.
There's some really good videos on YouTube, like people
Rube
who
Goldberg.
have Goldberg competitions.
Like one that just
turns
on the light. Is that like, do you think that's something that you're kind of going for a little bit?
Like it's, what do you mean? Like there's, it harkens back to it?
Yeah. Maybe that there's some subtext, or like subconsciously you've.
Yeah. So I try not to think of this as like, I try not to add it too heavily into the work.
Yeah.
I think there's that interest that I have of like, how can my eye lead from part to part to part, and to make something that can be a tangible device that can move the eye, but also moves how the mind works and how you think about how, for example, in a piece where there's like string or a chain, it's physically connecting all those together. And if you were to pull one, there's this reaction caused.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We're gonna backtrack. We're gonna back. We're gonna go way back.
Way back.
Jason, you said your art like fascination began at high school, but let's just say, when did it officially happen? When did you start drawing, and what was it like? What did you draw? Like your first few things, or your first year of drawing, right? When it was really bad.
So,
Maybe you weren't. Maybe you were really like expert at the very beginning, right?
Are you asking as a kid? Because I did
as a
drawings
kid, all the way, like very beginning.
I would do a lot of drawings of cartoon characters and action figures.
Okay.
I think that's a natural portal into art.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of a fun story. I got in trouble in 3rd grade because my grandmother, the place that she worked, had a copy machine.
Okay.
And so I decided I would do a really good drawing of a California raisin.
Okay.
And then I went to my grandmother's work and I ran copies of it. And it was like this California raisin that was on a beach towel, and he had the sunglasses. He looked really cool. And so I took those back to school, and I said, during lunchtime, I said, hey, everybody, here's some drawings. And wouldn't it be cool if we all colored these? And we saw how different they looked, and we can compare them. And so I was pretty shy going to a new school, and I wanted to use that as a way of meeting some people who were into the same things. And so I passed these out, and then my teacher told me, I understand that you like art. She was really kind about it. She goes, I understand that you like art, Jason. But somebody brought it to my attention that some students were not doing their homework, and they were doing colorings instead. And I think it's best if you don't pass these out to other students anymore. So she told me to kind of keep it to myself.
Oh man, what a shame.
But I would do that. I would draw things during breaks, and my brother's an artist, and we would draw things and kind of compare what each other would have.
Your brother's an artist?
Yeah, he's a painter.
I did not know that.
Can I plug him?
What?
No, so yeah, he's an artist, and having that around, I think, helped too.
Older or younger?
I'm the oldest of 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was it like? What was that like?
Being the oldest, or having other people who did drawings?
Both. Go with being the oldest, and then talk about how what's like to have a brother who's also an artist.
Well, I was just by myself for like a year and a half, and then he came about, so I don't remember what it was like before him. But we're close in age, and he would draw more like dinosaurs and rocks, and I would draw Batman, and what else? Ninja Turtles was another one I really tried to study. So mine were like more based off of pop culture. And I think there was some crossover, as we would watch the same shows. And so I think, when we went into college, eventually we happened to go towards the same goals. And so we were in school for a little while, but then we went to different schools for our 4-year experience.
Yeah.
We did community college, 2-year, and then we went to a different school for 4-year. And so kind of keeping an eye on what each other's doing outside of that. It's good. It's competitive, but in a good way. It's not competitive in oh, I'm better, or you're better. It's more like, oh, what are you doing that's interesting, new, and how can I adopt that? I think that's more the conversation of, oh, that looks really interesting. Can we talk about how that was done, or what does that mean? Yeah.
Was there ever any arguments
that are into art? Like, what does your family look like in terms of art?
The typical, I guess the typical like answer to that would be like they would make some reply saying, "Oh, when I was a kid, I would draw tanks or something like that. I don't know, or like helicopters, and I was pretty decent at that." And so because uh, they would draw tanks or helicopters, that's the reason why I am moderately decent at what I do. I was like, I guess that's the reason why, because you drew a little bit. No. And then
So they're taking credit for it because it's something that
maybe I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but my initial like immediate family, they don't have I wouldn't say like an artistic ability, but like, you know, this doodling ability. I don't know. Like it's hard to kind of make that comparison, right?
But you know, a lot of people say that you're artistic, and that's a word that they use, like, "Oh, you're artistic," when they talk to an artist, and I think that is something that is I don't agree with that word because it undermines the work. Like
yeah.
right, and they say it like, "Oh, you're artistic because it's something that you were probably good forever doing this. You're very good at a child doing this," and I'm thinking back, it's like, no, actually, there's a lot of education, a lot of work, and I made some really bad art to get to this point, because you have to do that. You have to find out what's not right.
Yeah.
You know? But I think from a layman's point of view, when someone sees that you're good at something in the arts, they would see that you're artistic, but they don't say that about mathematicians, right?
Yeah.
There's not a word for it. Like you're a really good calculator.
Yeah. Yeah. Like talent. Like,
yeah. Right.
I guess through my formative years, I was terrible. I was awful, and I still compare myself to like the cream of the, like, you know, the best of the best. So I still kind of think that, but like back in the day, I was like just bad. Like the only reason why that was people knew me as an artist was because I made up my own characters. They weren't that good. They were quite bad. No joke. I actually got teased a lot because I think I would do what I think they call them muscular robots, and I never studied anatomy. I just as a kid, I just would see these comic characters, and I'd see that they just had like muscles that didn't make any sense, and I just like would put like, you know, like when you were a kid, you do like drew circles for like for everything. Only that was just me. I don't know about you, but I would draw like
I had
circles for abs.
I had some drawings that looked like the Michelin Man, or it looked like the Stay Puft Marshmallow. You know, like it was sort of like really round ball shapes that sort of like covered all over the body irregularly. Yeah. They just kind of erupted out of whatever portion you felt like it was going to be. Oh, that's what a chest looks like. Let me just draw some big circles where a chest should be, and it was really awful. And it's kind of funny and embarrassing. I'm glad that we come from a time where that's not held on the internet, because somehow I escaped from all those early high school drawings getting there.
Yeah, because it was bad.
Because whoever's on Instagram, you know, like you're growing up with it now, that it's there somewhere. It's like hidden inside the web.
Well, with the Instagram now, what would be interesting is you have the kids that are doing it. Like you can see the progression, right? And that's something that I would say would be pretty. That's like beautiful. Like it's amazing to see that. Mm-hmm. You know, like what you're doing this like at this age, and all of a sudden, boom, right?
Yeah.
But that's something that's always fascinated me. Like the whole like artistic, the whole talent thing. Like, listen, I think it's a skill that is gained, not necessarily born with it. Maybe you have an affinity. I don't know. I like talk about this a lot, but like maybe you have an affinity, or you can pick up things quicker, but you know you still got to work at it, right?
Yeah. And I think those that, you know, the affinity, it's that there's a passion there, and you can go from very, very, very poor what you're producing into those that are much better. I think that's where you see that growth.
The passion.
Because people care. Yeah, they care
Yeah.
to get over that hump or that struggle where otherwise others might give up. They say, "Oh, I'm not doing this right," or it doesn't look correct, and it's put away after a couple tries. But those that go into it, I think it's that they get over that, they get through that trench.
I always come in with the psychology of like my paintings are always going to be bad, so I might as well learn something from it. And
What were
usually,
those? Yeah, what were those words using earlier? The positive words that you're giving me some compliments.
oh, superlative.
That's one. You need to have that on a wall. You need to write that for yourself.
Yeah, I probably I should have it right behind here. I like to say that in class sometimes. The sound extra smell like the sound. Sorry, I'm not doing myself just. There we go. I'm not doing myself justice. To sound extra smart, right? But and it's like I think it's like of the finest degree or highest quality or something like that. I think that's what it means or close to. I think it also might be in uh, um, an episode of The Office. I don't know if I think
Right.
it might be.
I
But
don't know, but it sounds like it would be.
yeah, I think when Dwight Schrute is or is it Michael Scott? He makes a like letter of recommendation, and he says like something about the word superlative, but it really should be called like Dwight Schrute or something like that of finest quality. I don't know. But
I like
yeah, that
I like where the I like snazzy. Snazzy's
what's that?
like snazzy.
Like what's the definition of snazzy?
I don't know. It just sounds like kind of sounds hip. It's good, but it's hip. It's snazzy.
Yeah.
It's full of
It sounds
sleep.
like maybe you'd have to you're trying too hard when you're critiquing or something like that. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you did a lot of teenage TNMTs and did
That
you
phase.
did you do GI Joes?
GI Joes. I
Yeah.
had a lot of GI Joes, um, and I would draw them out. I kind of liked that you can pose them better than
Hmm.
others.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. A lot of Justice League, leaning more towards the DC side of it. Still do,
Mhm.
but I would do a lot of drawings of Superman and Batman, because then I can color them in. They had some, easy to relate to
Yeah.
costumes. That I can find that color. It's not too complicated.
Yeah.
Getting some red trunks on Superman, for example.
Did you were you like Alex Ross where you'd use yourself as the source material?
No, but I have seen what his work looks like, and
Have you seen he uses himself as the model?
for some of them, yeah, like the
Yeah,
jewelry he uses. And I've got a book where it shows his drawings and then his photographs and then his paintings, and
yeah,
it shows like how they also change, like
yeah,
as almost like a caricature.
yeah. It
Yeah,
looks kind of like him. Some of those images,
when you look at
like
them together, you're like, yeah, his face, his model is definitely there, and he calls upon his friends when he needs someone who's like much more heroic looking, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Have you
Um,
thought about that for yourself? Like, were your muscle robots, were they based off something?
I was looking at comics and um they weren't even robots. Like they were just like comics. They're all in spandex, right? And
Mhm.
this is before they upped the game and started adding like accessories all over the body, and so like they added like bulky parts, and so
Yeah.
you're not used to that. So like Cyclops, Magneto, they had like just
Yeah.
spandex, and like they would do like a line on the calf to make it appear like they have a boot, but they don't really have a boot. It's just a line,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
just like there's like one fabric just meets up with another, and
Yeah,
you can see every muscle and veins too. Robert
yeah.
Liefeld would draw things that are not even on the surface of the human body coming through the spandex. I thought Without the stand, it's showing
he
all
would
that
never
stuff.
he would never draw feet.
There's a great website that I oh, it's something about like Rob can't draw or something like that. Sorry, Rob, if you're watching.
Hey, but you gotta admit though, in the industry, you're not rewarded on how good you are. You're rewarded on how fast you are. And he's incredibly fast. From my understanding, I hear that he can like just pump them out. You know,
Well,
he can pump out drawings real quickly.
he's choosing his battles.
Yeah,
No
but he's
feet,
gotten
but
better.
he's done. He doesn't even get to shins sometimes because he does that pose where it's like the knee is coming out at you and it's covering the entirety of the rest of the leg.
I
And
love.
I kind of wonder about, well, that's cool because then the viewer can imagine a lot.
Yeah,
But then when you start to see the magic trick, it falls apart.
yeah.
Rob.
I love in like a lot of his scenes. So there's like ethereal steam or fog coming off the ground so that he could hide the feet and legs. You know.
There's always tricks, and if it's not the steam or the fog or a leg covering up the foot, it's someone else covering up the foot.
Yeah.
But never a foot covering up the foot.
Sorry, Jason. Jason, so you spend a lot of time on paintings. You're painting like it's by default. You don't know how long. You spend like a whole series of The Office on one painting. Obviously, it takes a fair bit amount of patience, right? Were you always this patient, or did you build that up as a skill? And what do you like do to achieve like a high level of patience? Because I find I've had paintings where I spent a long time, like a year, and I felt like I was in torture. Like every time I went to paint that thing, I felt like I was being tortured to paint this piece, and it was very like emotional. Like so how do you overcome that?
Yeah. So to sustain that energy, um, sometimes it's a matter of putting it away and starting something new.
Okay.
That will happen sometimes. So I have like I don't know if it's visible, but like these. This is a much smaller piece, and it's not less intense, but it's one that I can get into the microcosms where I'm working on a big piece, and if I was expected to do that just as quick, it might be that challenge. But I've also found a way that I kind of look at it as having a chess quality to it, that I can start something and then I can think ahead, like, okay, I want to get this done, but for now, I'm just going to really enjoy getting these gradients and flat shapes, and then over time, I think the speed has kind of been flexible because there are some shortcuts that you find. Because if I were to do that years ago, I would probably look at it and say, well, that's just not going to be possible. I need to find a way to kind of work around those corners. But I'm able to get to that level that I hope for while not necessarily slowing down. So yeah, back to the question, how do you maintain that? I think I've always had that kind of interest in the microcosms, the small areas, and I do think about it that way, where inside of the work there's enough imagery going on that I can spend like a day or two just working on like that section, and then move on to another section, and it feels like a new painting when I move from that first area to that second area. But it does wear on, because you're thinking, oh, I really want to get it done for this deadline, or I feel like I'm just going through the paces. So that being said, sometimes the ideas change as I go from beginning to end, and something happens in the news or something happens in life that you kind of think about, well, this is a much better idea that is being born out of the original idea. And that, I think that kind of keeps it exciting, is the openness of what the work is about, because it's not in a vacuum. You're not making work about how you felt at the start of it. You're making work about how you feel through that entire timeline of 9 months ago until now. And stuff can change. Stuff can change on a daily basis. And then you're like, I'm going to scrape this away, and I'm going to end up making it about that thing that, because it's already there. It's just matured.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So is there any like established habits that you've kind of built up through the years that help you consistently work on your pieces, or is there something that you've felt that works, or like what are some tricks in that regard? Like, do you like at this time this is paint time, no other time, right? Or is it like I have to do this set of actions before I go down to my studio? Or do you have any type like habits or rituals that you kind of consistently do throughout?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case, because there's so many other things kind of swirling around. Like if there's related to school, if there's like an event that's starting to happen, or a committee that I'm on, or grading periods, or putting new projects out. Sometimes that takes the lead, and the paintings have to be actually on the back burner. But what I do find is once I'm in the studio and working, I kind of think about it like, well, I'm going to just get this surface ready. And then I'm just going to work on the gradient or the background colors. And then I'm going to start to build upon that, some of the more basic shapes. And I kind of think about it that way, so I'm not working against myself.
Yeah.
I do think about like working from behind to front, but also from there's times when I'll go against that, because I find that shadows are always easier to put in last. Because I can mix the color, I can glaze it back on top. And if I were to do shadows too early, it's kind of silly, because I'm not really building the space or those basic shapes. So I kind of think about, well, what's going to be the finishing of this? And I end up using much smaller brushes near the end than what I would use near the beginning, for example.
So I do that often too. Whenever I make a cast shadow, that glaze effect, it's just a simple little solution, right? Because the glaze kind of overlays on top of the paint, the underpaintings, or the paint behind it, right? It creates that effect with very little like actual, I guess we'd say modeling, right? A form, right? So that's all. I felt that was a neat trick. And you use linseed oil for that, or what do you?
Yeah, it depends on what what's behind it and what surface and what color. But I use linseed oil a lot, but I'll also use liquid.
Okay.
In moderation as well, not mixed together. But it just depends on what layer the painting and the purpose, how I want that paint to move.
Okay.
Whether I use one versus the other.
So which medium do you use most? You use the most medium?
I probably use linseed oil a little bit more now. Before, I would definitely use more liquid.
Yeah.
But I found that liquid would get actually too tacky too soon for my taste. Where I can move around the linseed oil paint, and I can get that to model a little bit more. It didn't start to, tack up.
Doesn't linseed oil it doesn't dry quickly? Is that correct?
Yeah, it makes it dry slower.
So like you probably have to have multiple paintings because of the fact that, or you'd have to, if you have a larger painting like the one in the back, you could move to the right or left depending on where you started. But if you are working with linseed oil, if you don't have anything to do with it, you have to have another painting going on standby, right?
Yeah, so I can't expect to go back to it like a day later, even, because they'll still be wet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll move around the piece. Like one behind me, all the landscape stuff was done before any of the keys or the locks on top of it.
Yeah.
But even then, I would work on the gray portions separate than the relief, the yellow and the orange portions. So I would have to make sure that they didn't touch, otherwise they would start to blur too much together. But that happens is I would kind of plan out, well, if that part's something I worked on it 2 days ago, it might be dry and I could do that again. But if there's something I worked on like a day ago, it will probably still be wet. And I have to find something else to do.
So 2 days is that's actually pretty fast, right? For like
If it's thin, it can dry in 2 days. If it's not,
okay.
or depending on what color as well. Some colors are very, very slow drying, um, where others are not going to be too bad with
What are
the
some slow drying colors that you know of?
alizarin crimson,
Yeah.
black, any kind of black. I want to say ivory black is, which one's slower between Mars and ivory? One is going to be, I think ivory is slower.
I did. I have experience with lizard and crimson. Yeah, that stuff does not want to dry ever. It's just
I don't
like
use it that much anymore, maybe because of that reason. But I end up, my palette, I've kind of gotten to like a 10 tube palette, yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, Hansa yellow, naphtha red, cerulean blue, burnt umber, white and black, ivory for both. And then I'll have my other colors, like there's a like a Gamblin. They make a teal, I think it is,
yeah.
and then a violet dioxane, violet. There's a few special colors. Magenta is one that's really hard to mix no matter what. So I'll have those on reserve, but for the most part, I can get a lot of out of maybe 10 tubes. So I try not to like rely on buying each individual color. I'll do a lot of color mixing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a Naples yellow, I'll probably also have as well.
So tell us what a typical day is like for you, and then um, what would you change in order for it to become like the perfect day? Like, what would you have to do to say this day, like there is literally nothing I could have done to make it better?
Oh. Wow. That's putting a lot of that's pretty heavy. Like, how would you make a day perfect? Because at the end of it, you're like, well, maybe I could have still mowed the yard. There's always something that you're like, I wish that would have, or something that you didn't quite fit in. Um, so typical day. During the week, I'll wake up and sometimes the cats will wake me up. Sometimes the cats will wake up Sharon, and Sharon will wake me up, and then I'll tend to that. And then I'll get to my real alarm and get out of bed,
Hmm.
7:30, give or take. Um, Check email, hop in the shower, get ready, go to school. Classes, Monday classes start early. Monday, Wednesday classes, I have 9, and then I have some office hours. So I'll be at school until about 9 to 5. Break for lunch in the middle. So what's cool about this and adding to what is closer to a perfect day is that I live pretty close to where I work.
Hmm.
Close enough that I can walk on some days, but usually I'll still drive, and even then it's not like driving a half hour. It's just like, you can get there in a snap. So I'll go home and be able to do lunch there, and then come back to school, and then I'll be home on Monday and Wednesday about 5. Then I get home, and it's not like, teaching is, you can't just stop. There's still emails and stuff that you're loading up online, and answering questions. It's that. And then my Tuesday day will be later with classes. So I have my mornings where I can get things done around the house or prep work. And then I'm at school until about 8 o'clock. So I have like an afternoon and then night class that takes place. But then weekends, I'm still doing a lot of things related to school, and it's not like, I don't know if there's like ever a free day. Sharon and I will do this sometimes. We'll say, oh, you know what? Let's try not to do anything school related this Saturday, and it's keeping each other in check. Don't check email, or try not to upload that, or try not to look at that, or don't go to physically to school. So That's typical days that the day job will drive a lot of what happens. Um, and then if there's other things, they're going to be on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't traveled. We going back to like COVID, we didn't leave the house, but maybe 4 times in April. That was like the one, really when the lockdown was the heaviest. But then since then, we'll go out and we'll pick up things from the store. But we haven't gone out to eat except maybe twice, like where you're physically in a restaurant. Going out for entertainment, we've done a couple things here and there, but it's not like we're going into a building with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I spend a lot of time with the cats and at home, and just kind of finding things at home that are fun. I play guitar.
Oh yeah.
And I like playing video games and reading at home, just relaxing. Yeah.
What games are you playing currently?
Oh, I was playing the Batman Arkham games for a while,
Okay.
but that I stopped doing, and then I was playing what's it called? There's a racing game, but I haven't played that in a while either. I've actually been playing a silly game online. It's called wormax.io. It's one of those worm games where you try to it's online and you try to wrap yourself around other players, but you eat once they run into your side with their head, they turn into energy balls, and then you eat, and then you get bigger, and then and then you try to like not run into other people while also eating their energy because they've run into people. Basic worm game.
Yeah.
But what's I don't know driven me is that you'll see people online and they'll have screen handles or screen names, and you're like, I'm gonna try to chase after that person because I don't like their name, what they stand for.
so it's a multiplayer game online.
Yeah, it's free. You don't pay for it. It's just you just go online and there's different versions of it, but it's like one of those games where you can pop in and play for like 5 minutes, or if you wanted to, you can be longer than that. But you get bigger and bigger until you can start to like circle around multiple worms.
Yeah.
And then you're doing this chain where they can't get out because they're completely closed in.
Uh-huh.
And then you get smaller, you start to close in until they're getting crushed.
Have you done that? You've done that before?
Crush people, yes. Worms.
Not really.
Not really.
So
it's like social distancing, but it's kind of like, you're the bad guy. I'm going to get close to you. You're going to run into me. I'm going to eat you.
Okay.
And that's the game.
And you say you played the guitar. Do you play the guitar like when you're in like when you have a mental block at all? Like some people like to jam out when they're like, it's like I think it has to do. I heard this psychologist was talking about like your subconscious mind is what causes you to learn, or which is why like babies and little children before 5 are in a state of constant learning because they're in like they're in like constant REM sleep or whatever. I don't know. But like, and where you get those states are in like points of time where you're doing passive things, where you're in that kind of meditative state, and some of it has to do with the shower. Some people playing the guitar. Is that something like that you do?
Yeah, I'm not thinking actively about it. It's more like just letting my hands and my mind take over. But sometimes I'll play actual things. Like I'll listen to something and I'm like, that's a song I might want to learn, or something I might want to write myself. And then other times I'm just like droning out and not really thinking about having a start or an end to it, but just getting sounds to connect to each other. And I think on that level, it's really good to relax. And sometimes ideas will come to me, or I'll start thinking about other things outside of the music. But it's one where I do think about like these connections, you know, that I think anything that I make, I'm interested in how one might move into the next. So whether it's in painting or musically, I try to think about painting musically that way, where it's that while these are things, they're also like shapes and colors, and they have a pause to them, or they have a volume or crescendo or rhythm, you know, and I try to think about them in those terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I got when I started playing guitar, it was the same year that I broke my arm.
Oh yeah.
And I was on this cast, and my cast, how would it look? I had my pinky was covered by the cast, like this, and this finger as well. And then I had these 3 fingers exposed.
Uh-huh.
So when I was playing guitar, I couldn't move my wrist at all, and I couldn't strum. So I learned how to fingerpick using just those 3 fingers, thumb and index and middle finger. And I kind of, you know, I didn't want that to stop me from learning something new and that I enjoyed because I had a cast on. And then I learned how to draw really well because I couldn't move my wrist. You know, it was like that sort of amateur hour thing where, you know, oh, your arm's broken. What do you do? How do you draw? And so I actually started to draw really well with from my shoulder.
Uh-huh.
And I teach that a lot in, you know, my classes, because you're going to have you know, the hand is kind of interesting because it's got a lot of like micro machines inside of it. Not micro machines like the cars, but okay. Okay, so you have all these machines, like you can draw from the shoulder, you know, you can draw from the elbow, you can draw from the wrist, and you can draw from the fingers, depending on which one you're moving and how you're trying to navigate that space.
Yeah.
But I think that was a moment where I was kind of coming into appreciating arts. So I was learning how to play guitar and learning how to draw. I was like 15 or 16, but I happened to have a broken arm. And it's interesting how many skills you pick up when you're not able to do things out of your old habits.
How'd you break your arm?
Oh, geez. Okay.
Okay.
I was telling you earlier about corduroy. No, this is not a corduroy subject. No, I was at a friend's house, and he bought a punching bag.
Okay.
And he's like, all right, let's try this out. Let's do a punching bag. And we went out to his garage and had it hung up, and I hit it, and I probably didn't hit it the right way because I didn't know how. And so I broke this, and I didn't know it was broken right away, but I started to feel like this was starting to happen. You know, like my pinky was starting to like wrap over it when I would have a regular relaxed position.
Yeah.
Because it would like want to go this way or go underneath. Yeah. And so we went into the doctor, and it wasn't, I don't know where it was broken, but I think it was broken to the point that it was wanting to move in.
Okay.
So a splint, and I had to wear a cast to kind of keep that away for a while it healed. That's probably the most damaged my body. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But as far as like keeping me from drawing or painting or playing guitar, that was the one that was my broken hand story.
Your friend was saying, the joke's on you, Jason. I filled this bag with bricks.
He did. He wanted me to learn something new because he's like, I play guitar. Maybe I'll either sabotage him or he's going to become finger picking for that reason.
That's interesting, man. Do you get with that level of detail that you work with? Do you get like carpal tunnel at all?
Sometimes. So I don't. Let me get a brush, because it's hard to describe. I guess I'll just use this pen because brushes are too far away right now. But,
yeah.
You know, so there's ways that I would hold a brush early on, like you hold it like this, or you'd hold it like this, like a pencil. What has helped both in the precision, but also keeping my hand from getting cramped up, is I actually start to hold it more like chopsticks, I guess. Okay. So when I want to get a straight line, I'm putting my pinky on the surface, and then I'm using this like a jackhammer to determine the depth of how much the tip of the brush or how much the full end of the brush is touching. So if I want something that's really like a thicker mark, I would, press down more and I would drag. But by keeping my pinky down, all the pressure's right here, and that way it's kind of helped my hand because I'm not doing this on the canvas. I'm doing, let me get back on camera, like this. This is kind of what's going on. So, and then I'll lay this on top and do one of these numbers or have a stick or a block underneath. But I think that goes back to an earlier conversation about how I'll have one painting that's to that point that I can add detail.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll have another painting where it's like, I just need to work on flat color. So I'll get out a brayer and try to do some rainbow rolls, get like colors to like blend really well.
Use a brayer to make that gradient?
Yeah. Some people,
how do you do that?
I've had that where some might come up and ask me, oh, do you do an airbrush? And, because it looks like it has a softness to it. And I don't, because I can't, and I don't really want to anyways, because I like what the brayer can do. So I'll start on, I don't know, this one's fine. This is even done with the brayer. So I'll have a color and I'll start to put it on until about there.
Okay.
And then I got another color and I'll start to put it on like this. And then I'll keep doing that back and forth until they have a nice even blend. So it looks like two stripes, right? And
that's cool.
And then by doing this with the brayer back and forth, the brayer is picking up the new color. And then by this time, it only has that new color, and then you go back again. And you just do that for like an hour, and then you don't have any brush strokes because, or brayer marks as well. That makes it all go away. But other times I'll use a brush and get the same effect. It just depends on the piece. But, like a large one behind me, like a 3-foot piece, I don't know if that's visible, but this is one that, goes from a pink to a lighter color. And I'm still doing the same technique. It just takes longer to get that blend.
Are you getting any reverb?
Oh, reverb? I don't hear any reverb.
No echoes. I'm getting echoes.
I'm echoing?
Out of nowhere. No, I am. I'm hearing myself talk now.
Oh.
Interesting.
It sounds fine to me, but I don't know.
As long as it's not happening in real time, it's just happening in my like headset, I'm okay. And it's gone now. So I never even brayer. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna look into that brayer technique if I ever want to do a gradient.
I have no ownership here. I can't claim I have ownership. I'm sure there's other people who do it, but it's just it's a printmaking thing, and it just happens to be one I did in painting. So I like that combination because I'm doing things on I'm pulling from some graphic design techniques. I'm using some programs. I'm using traditional methods. I'm using some that are like drawing methods, printmaking. So I try not to look at just painting as my source of influence, whether technical or people I'm looking at.
So what are so you've established you use like a printmaking technique, a brayer. Mm-hmm. You use a vinyl cutting machine or a tool that will allow you to make elaborate stencil work. Is that correct?
Yep.
What's another like unconventional tool like that you've used that isn't necessarily painting,
Yeah. Sometimes I'll put down paint like a glaze.
Okay.
And then I'll try to think about it like reductively. So once it's down, I'll start taking a stylus and scribbling into it.
Okay.
Or using a razor blade, or using some Gamsol is good for this as well, like pulling it back up. So I thought about it as more of a reductive technique than one where I'm only adding paint on top. Mm-hmm. So an example of that is kind of interesting is like, when you put down paint and it's still a little bit, it's dryish, but it's tacky. It's that in-between state. You can start to snap it with painter's tape, and you can get some kind of cool broken textures. You know what I mean? Like you can get some things that you can't get with the brush.
Yeah.
So if I want something that feels like it has dirt or decay on it, I'll put down, like a burnt umber wash, and then I'll let it sort of settle, and then I'll snap it up with painter's tape. Um, but I've been doing some reductive techniques along with the more additive things. I've also, yeah, I think that's probably a few, but I try to pull from what tools can be best for that particular area. Sometimes I don't know if it's going to work, and I just have to put it down, knowing that I'll probably be able to fix it if it's so bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Jason, I'm going to have some weird questions now.
Do it.
Well, not too weird, but one's like, if you could start over your journey as an artist, what would you have done differently?
Oh, to start over.
With the same, if you loaded with the same knowledge, or
Yeah.
you knew like all the experiences that you've gathered up to now, what decisions would you have made, right, in order to for whatever goals that you had in mind?
Yeah, I think one thing that I think about is when I was in school, there was that part of me where I was afraid of having a bad outcome with the work I was making. So I think if I were to go back in time and be like, hey, you know what? Listen here, 18-year-old, 20-year-old version, I would probably tell myself it's going to be fine. take some risk with the color, take some risk with the application.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid of making bad stuff, because you're going to learn more from what those look like, because you're going to find out that sometimes the bad ideas are actually going to be the right ideas. And I think there's that safety net, like having, if I knew how to do something, I probably did it to the point where it might have, for a few years, during undergrad, became like a crutch. Like, okay, you're good at this, so let's make sure you do that instead of venturing a little bit further out.
Mm-hmm.
I probably also wouldn't have punched that punching bag for one. No, that was fine. But if we're only talking about like school and training, I think those are like to not be afraid of the risk taking that can happen in the studio, to make some choices that are outside of who you are. It's kind of tricky.
What are some odd ways that you have sold paintings?
Odd ways. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I had a few that I thought were going to sell, but they were like, you get those scams, so I don't know if this is, I didn't sell these, but but you get those scams, and those are always memorable and interesting. Do you get the one that is like, oh, hey, I was looking at your website and it's my wife's anniversary coming up, and I was thinking this would be really cool for her. And then you get another email and you're like, that's a scam. Then you get another email that's like, hey, my wife's sister's anniversary is coming up, and it's the exact same thing, but they changed the names and the reason. Like that was one I was getting for a while, like the gift giving one, but they don't ask you the price. They don't ask you. They don't mention a price or the name of the work.
Yeah,
it's simply like that piece that I saw on your website.
I've here's a little funny thing about that. I've scammed the scammers to sending me their checks, and then I've given them to the authorities.
And what they do with them?
Probably nothing. I don't know.
I thought you were going to lead off with like, hey, something funny? I was that scam.
No, I've trolled them. Like I even went so far as I made a fake email address saying you got to contact my artist agent, my art agent. His name is Mike Hunts, and you gotta send him an email at michaelhunts@gmail.com, and he will schedule it. I'm currently on a worldwide art tour, and right now I'm in San Diego, and next week I'm going to be at X, and then at X. And right now my art agent has everything in the New York gallery space in storage. Contact him. He will give you the details on the piece that you like, and he will tell you the price. This is super projected like troll thing, and then eventually I'd get a check and I'd just stop talking to him. Like, I'll not stop talking. Like you are, I reply, say you've been had. You're fake. Whatever.
Gotcha.
You know, stop sending me an email.
With the feds. Yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah. So I don't know. Selling work. I work slow, and it's difficult to like think of a number. What does that mean when you have something that's taken that long? So I can't put into it what minimum wage would look like, or I can't like equate it to hours. So when things sell, it's actually pretty normal. Like it'd be at a show, and it's an older work, you know, that I probably would have. I have a lot of newer work that's not going to be for sale. But the older work, a lot of it is going to be through physical shows, more so than online selling. But it's something I'm kind of thinking more and more about, you know, like how post-COVID or whatever the world looks like years from now, is how do we start selling work? Does that change, or does it go back to normal? What is normal?
I've already told you how much you should sell your pieces for, you know.
Now, Matt, you have that. You have that much, and you can give me right now.
Oh God. I'll try my darndest to make a Jason Bly recreation, and it's gonna look atrocious. But I was like, oh yeah, this is close enough. I'll just put it right there, hang it up. Like missing like half the detail, maybe like missing like 80% of the detail.
You know, there's that. Is it a Monty Python skit where they go to the museum and there's like a Rembrandt, and they say something to the effect of like, "Oh, it's such a dark painting, but I really like the nose. Can I give you 10% of the asking price just because I want 10% of the painting? Can we cut that part out?" It's the only part that I can see. Everything else is so dark.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, though. Oh gosh.
Sometimes you get those responses though, like, "Hey, that's a great piece. I'm going to do you a favor, and if you have it in my house, I'll tell other people that you made it."
You've had that happen?
Well, you get those conversations. Like that's probably exaggerated, but you know, you get those sort of like, I'm going to help you out.
I've never had that happen. Like, how many do you have? Like a concert every day at your house, so people can see your painting?
Who are you inviting in that's going to be so impressed with your
Jay-Z's coming down, you know, like, this is an amazing piece, and then you know, The Rock, you know, he's lifting weights as he's looking at your painting, you know, it's like those keys aren't heavy enough. So you haven't had like any really interesting like ways of selling paintings, like odd ways, other than just being like trolled. Like I've had that happen to me numerous of times, and like, it's not my first rodeo. You give me it's the same like dialogue, right? Do you have how many have you had? Have you had like at least 5?
Yeah, at least 5.
Congratulations, you're a professional artist. You're a professional artist.
That's how we know. And you should put them on the wall, like as if, you know, like when you go to a doctor's office. That's what you do in a studio, is like, how many times has somebody tried to scam you? And then you know you've made it. It's like being a musician and having Weird Al Yankovic call you up. Because that's how they know that they're popular.
That was back in the day when parodies were few and far between.
Yeah.
Right. And so like whenever you knew you made it, if Weird Al decided to do a parody of your song,
then you're big time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if Rob Liefeld doesn't draw your feet.
What was it? There's that of Captain America where it's a side profile of Captain America's chest, and it literally is like 2 heads in front, right?
Yeah.
And then he's got this shield that his arm would have to literally be like like this big compared to his body to hold that shield in that place. He always does like the scowling face. Smile, Cap. Like that's what they all do, right?
Yeah, everyone's talking, but they're talking like really intense. Like every tooth is going to show when they're talking to each other.
Yeah, they don't even open their mouth. They're ventriloquists. Like they're just throwing their voice. Cable. That's me saying Cable. How dare you do this to me, Magneto? I don't know. I can't improv with Cable and Magneto. Jason, if you had $25 million, what would you do?
I would. What would I do? That's a good question. I would pay back student loans. I would pay back any debt, and I don't, because you get that question like, oh, if you win the lottery, would you get a mansion? So I think if I could say what I want to do is changing aspects of my life that I feel are like comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody gets a big house, then they have to fill that house with more stuff, like the George Carlin, right? That houses are just those things that hold your things, and when you get a big house, you're more likely to get more things. And I think kind of getting settled, getting comfortable, having, I guess, that safety net, and then just finding places for the rest of the money go that I wouldn't feel bad about. Like finding some other outlets where it can be useful in terms of maybe helping out others. But yeah, that's a good question. What's the strangest or most unique answer you've had to that same question? Because mine, I feel, is kind of like normal. Like that's a normal thing to say. Is just use it for reasons.
Yeah, that's the first time I've asked it, actually. So I haven't really. I just thought it'd be kind of.
I felt like I should have like let off with something like by a Damien Hirst piece or something, and then it's all gone.
Yeah, you'd have to.
I could have a nice yellow banana with the tape on it, and
you'd be very lucky if you could get one for 25 million.
That's what they say. Yeah, I could probably buy the materials. Like if I bought a shark and found somebody to fake it.
Yeah, you can make a good fake. But I don't know if you could buy one of his works for 25 million. I don't know how much he cost. I don't know. Does he paint his stuff at all?
Does he what? Sorry?
Does he do his own paintings, or does Dane Hurst paint any of his stuff? I painted like a circle in one of his circle paintings.
Yeah, I read an article where he was doing some because he hires out.
Yeah.
Right. And I read an article where he would come through and he would take some white paint and he would add some like impasto areas to the work.
Yeah.
Kind of finding brilliance where it needs to be bumped up a little bit more. But I don't know if he's doing more than that. It's that whole like going back to Champ, like, is it the idea or is it the product?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do that. Even if someone paid me like $25 million of like, hey, you can hire all this people, you can hire this work out. I don't know if I would be okay with that.
Yeah,
I know I would not be okay with that.
The lines become very blurred, claiming that it's yours when you've hired a whole team that's like tantamount to being like a film, right? Mm-hmm. Directed by this person, but you have the credits, right? And the credits are that, like, the artist should probably give credit to have a credit underneath, like idea from Damien Hirst, credits like bass like flat tone artist so and so, like paint mixer this, right, framer this, whatever he needed.
How long the art history books would be if that happened. It'd be like one page and the image would be very small because the next 10 pages would be for people who actually made the work.
Oh, wow. That's news to me.
Imagine if that was, because you'd have to recreate that credit every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
you can have like
like
yeah.
like I find it interesting. Like I understand if you're doing these large paintings and you need you want to do like the main stuff. Like if you're doing like if the flat if you're doing like flat tones and you don't
Mhm.
that's just like any person can do that. Like just like paint by numbers and to save you some time. I get it, right? But I like in today's age. Like I think I get a lot of students who say I like Damien Hirst or Jeff Koons, and I'm like, that he doesn't like he creates it, but it's
Mhm.
like idea and property, but he doesn't have an actual hand in the process. Like he has hand in process, but it's not like his hands are he's in the muck, he's in the dirt, you know. He's actually struggling to make this thing look like the object, you know.
Right.
Like he just has the idea and he leaves the people that he hires to struggle, right? So they lose there's like this disconnect, so they don't even know that. I have to tell them, like, he's like this, what would you call it, what's the terminology for that type of artist?
Right.
I think you stated it.
Oh, whatever I said earlier, I don't know. It was
Production or something.
yeah. You mean like a production artist versus the one who's doing the ideation, right?
Something like that. I don't know. It's a studio artist or like the like assembly line. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think it's different if it's collaborative. Like if you have the name of the artist, and then there's
Yeah.
a number of people who are working alongside that person. It's really beautiful to think of
Yeah.
how there's feedback that's going to what you could call the top, and then being absorbed, and then it's very fluid. Um, but it's different if that person isn't around, and they only show up after it's made. Um, but I think at the core of the conversation is that history, we need to communicate to history that there's more than just that single person who's made the piece. Even going
Yeah.
back to, you know, not just present day, but when you think about workshops, Renaissance, and surrounding, um, there is that mistaken identity of like who actually made that work and what did that person do, and how some of that is lost to time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't know. I knew it, but not to the extent of how you're explaining it.
Like
Like
it's been around for
yeah,
it's
I
not
knew
it's not a new
I knew like
yeah.
you had apprentice. You have apprentices doing a lot of the pre work, um, but now they're not really apprentices. They're paid laborers, right? Or paid workers. They're not taking an apprenticeship under Jeff Koons. Um, Maybe they are. I don't know. I just slammed the look at that. It's echo.
I'm gonna do that
I
too.
didn't know that.
Let me try that together. Do yours.
Oh wait, slam it. Oh, there we go. Um, yeah. Jason. So I struggle with this. The reason why I ask like habits and like techniques and all this stuff, or like things that you do prior to paintings, is because I find that for me to personally get stuff accomplished, I got to have like this rigid schedule to actually abide by. If not, like my my like dark side, I say would say, you know what, like yeah, the angel and the devil type thing. Like, you know what, just go downstairs and watch Netflix. It's much easier. It's fun. Have some oatmeal cream pies. Who cares, right? uh, so I have this thing. I have to write it down because to me, writing it down is like one step closer to saying this needs to be done. Um, and that's why I asked these type of questions. Um, so what? I don't know where I was going with that. I think there was a segue, but I kind of went on a weird oatmeal cream pie thing.
Yeah, thinking a
But
lot about.
you think about oatmeal cream pies?
Oh, just no, just. But you're talking about distractions and
Oh, yes.
yeah.
The
Go
the
on.
how do you juggle? being an artist and being a full-time professor, like from our talks before, like it's just the stuff that you're telling me, that just sounds like, oh, that sounds like a lot of work. I don't even know if I would even have time to even get to the studio, let alone just like putting out fires, you know? How do you do that?
Yeah. Um, you know, as I said, it's like some of that's gonna be pushed to the front. And
Yeah.
this semester, I mean, back in the spring semester, really, with COVID, I think it became elevated because you're not teaching one class, you're teaching one class and then the online version of it for those that are
Hmm.
not going to be there to witness that day of class. And, you know, so I think I do see that as a way that, you know, as educators, we're learning as we're going along. And the hope is that we come out of it with something better than what we went in with. It's like
Yeah.
my, you know, like a bad situation where you're trying to like twist it and turn it so it's helpful for you. So um, something I've been doing, and it's not different. I mean, there's the personal work, right? That thing that you show when you're in galleries. But I've been doing a lot of drawings and studies that are as fun and worthwhile, and I enjoy learning from them. But I've been doing a lot of work that's related to the teaching aspect. So
Hmm.
for me, it's like try not to think of that as separate. I think is I guess the antidote. Um, because when I do a study, it's like I'm still kind of engaged with that subject, even though it's not
Hmm.
one of these paintings that I would show. It's like a still life or a figurative piece. It's still something I made, and I try not to like separate the two. Um, and then on to the other question is like, well, how do I make time to do the other pieces? And it's a little bit of what you already said, where if you get them started, that's sometimes the trickiest part of the piece is just getting something started. And
Yeah.
so I try to treat it that way, where even if I don't know what it's going to look like, I start producing a surface. I start kind of putting down some colors, scraping them around, moving them, and then if it's looking at me, then I have to think of, well, I've got to do something to it because um, I think about it this way: if you have a white piece of paper, that white piece of paper is perfect, and it doesn't need you as an artist. It is totally fine on its own, and it can't be better, you know, because it's as white and it's perfect and it's clean, and so that lack of drawing doesn't require you as an artist to do something to it. But if you were to put down a scribble or put down a wash or put down some paint, then that piece now requires something else to happen to it because you've kind of pushed it 2% into that into that territory where it's not clean, it has a touch to it, it has human fallibility, and now
Hmm.
I have to spend a lot of time to like bring it back to something that feels worthwhile again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're trying to finish, like you're trying to make that piece feel more complete, right?
Yeah, just by getting something started, you can you know, like
'Cause-
if you have a white piece of paper, you rub charcoal all over it, like powdered charcoal.
yeah.
um, by doing that single act, then it kind of begs you to do more to it because you're like, just a dirty piece of paper. It needs
Hmm.
to feel like something better than what it is.
You want to solve a visual solution.
Yeah, yeah.
You're trying to solve a problem. Yeah.
So, yeah, but by creating the problem,
Yeah.
that's a great way to think about it too. Is that you know, as artists, we always say, "Oh, I'm going to problem solve. I'm going to problem solve. This is something I'm going to work out." But what we're excuse me, but what we fail to acknowledge is the fact that it's good to create the problem, you know, because it's not going to be created for us. Like, what problem are we trying to solve if there's not one looking us in our eyes, in our face?
That's what I try to explain to a lot of my students is they have a problem, they have to solve it, and what what I often fail probably explaining that there is there is no right answer. There's this multiple solutions. Some maybe executed more successfully than others,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that logic goes over them, right? Um, and so that's why I give them these weird assignments. Not even weird assignments. It was like they're so simple that they it gets misconstrued, right? But like I typically do that with my work. You know, I make things worse on purpose so that I can so I can find some way to reel it back in. You know.
Yeah, yeah. To sort of to find that place in the work where it's going beyond comfort, because you're making
Yeah.
choices that were not necessarily, sort of like the how-tos. When you look at books of like, oh, you should do this, then you do this, then you do this, and then you're done. There's such a pathway that is beyond those simple steps that's much more interesting. But that's where Procreate and Photoshop and doing drawings. So like a piece back here, like I took photos of it, and to work out what I want to do, I have to see what I don't want to do. Like I need to find what that thing looks like, the bad choice.
Yeah.
And so I'll print it out and I'll draw on top of it, and kind of work out maybe this could happen or maybe this could happen. And then once I have those three, then I can stare at what is a mistake. And mistakes are the most helpful thing because it tells me that I would have done that, but I know now what not to do. And it's kind of like, we're talking about music, how someone might, David Bowie, I think, is really good about this, where he would, in his music, create things, but he would sort of find places where it wasn't always right, and unconventional, I should say. And he would use words and patterns of chord progression rather, and he would have something that didn't feel right, but he would actually hear how it sounds. And if it didn't work, it would be like, well, let's try it again. And let's not go safe, but maybe find one that's right on the edge of safe and logic, versus going right over that cliff.
I agree. Like I tell everyone to kind of lean into discomfort, because that's where the growth is. And is when you do you say something like similar to that to your students when they feel they're afraid to make mistakes? And do you say something like that? Because I try to express that, like, you got to make mistakes, otherwise you won't know what's wrong, and it's like, listen, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and if you're just going to like teeter around on the safe zone, you're going to be in the same zone for years.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's tough because there's a point where mistakes might sound like, oh, I'm going to make something bad. I'm going to make something that's obviously not correct. But it's exploring what those look like. That school is a pretty safe place to do that, because if you go out, no one's going to tell you that it's not worthwhile pursuing. That person is going to be there to tell you that was good or bad, unless you have a really good relationship with somebody in the know. They're going to either be bored by it, or they're going to like walk by and change the channel in their mind. So yeah, I guess in the teaching, depends on the level, because sometimes it's just about getting students to like just being able to draw pictorially, or draw with volume, or paint with color rather than value. And there's that learning process. But then a little bit past that, there's that in-between stage where not painting one, but maybe painting two or three, where students, we've been calling these vacation pieces. You have your main work, and not to think of it as a study, but a vacation piece where you're doing something and you're exploring a new place, and you come back to your home with new understanding, because you've gone into a vacation, you've gone into somewhere that you can try something new. So those are like smaller works that can sometimes feed into what the other pieces are doing, but they're not a make it or break it, because you're treating it as that thing that you do when the other piece is drying, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Are you are you like a teacher who emphasizes volume and prolific work, or uh, like sparse work but severely analytic, like you analyze what you've done wrong and you try to improve uh, significantly within each piece? How do you how do you go about that? I like to talk about, like, just do as many things as you can. Just do it over and over and over again. Get the muscle memory, get the get your muscle memory working. Get those synapses and the muscle and brain connecting to create these lines as so, and just get better at doing that, and then incrementally you'll get better.
Mhm.
That's how I think of things. But some people work they function differently. Their brains work differently. They have to really look what they did wrong and then improve off the next piece. But like, they, instead of having that huge, like like that transitional pieces that built up to that, like a prolific artist, they have like every 10 frames is a big jump. Like their first piece is good, and then the second one is even better, but they missed that 10 frames. But the prolific artist they have those 10 frames, they have 10 to 12 pieces. The analytical one has like the 2 or the 3. Or how do you kind of go about that with your teaching? Do you
Yeah.
espouse certain methods?
Right. um, Again, I think it depends on the level and where they're at. For someone
Okay.
that's getting ready to graduate, it's that looking at, well, what is already there and how can we point that in one direction,
Okay.
instead of maybe trying more and going out and doing more volume. But then when you look at the scope of, from like freshman all the way to senior, I do explain it, especially to freshmen, as repetition is helpful, because not everything you're going to do is going to be perfect, and you're going to earn that muscle memory. Your eyes are going to pick up information. Your mind is not going to mess it up as much. Um, so I'm talking about that process of doing things again and again, um, especially at a freshman, sophomore stage. But then I also lean on the other side of it, that throughout the semester there might be a project where instead of doing a final critique, we'll do one that's in process,
Hmm.
and using the in process critique as a way of saying, well, if this is what we're looking at right now, and how can it start to change. um, Maybe there's things that you know how should I say this, if you wait until the end and it's already closed off, then whatever it said is not going to be helpful unless you start a new piece.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in-process critiques are really helpful because they can tell someone about, okay, let's try to steer this in this slightly different direction, but it doesn't mean that you're starting over. Um, you're just taking what's there and getting it sharper,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
channeling it somehow. Um, and then there's the time when someone might have, for example, in drawing one, currently they're doing a couple volumetric drawings. They're drawing the back of the object, drawing the front of the object. And I tell them that they're going to do 3 of those, but I'm collecting 2. So it allows them to learn by doing that 3 times. But the ones I'm looking at, there's going to be one that's dead. There's one that's not going to be as successful.
Yeah.
So I think I let them know about that process where, it's okay if one is bad as long as you learned from that bad one as you go into your third one, for example. Yeah.
And you said that um, you're you're uh, you're bouncing back between 2 genres of teaching right now. Like, you're some students are not coming to class, and you have to teach them like a double tap and teach them online. Like, you got to
Yeah, I'll
reiterate.
explain. Yeah, I'll explain that a little bit more. So it's a hybrid situation
Okay.
that in order to keep the numbers down within the room,
Okay.
um, we've had to cut the FaceTime in half. So, for example, I have a painting class that is 18 students, and so I meet 9 of them on Monday,
Uh-huh.
and that'll be for painting one. And then I've got my painting 2 through 5, and it's a stacked class, so that's why it's got so many different levels inside of it. But I'll meet my other levels on Wednesday. So I
Mm-hmm.
meet one of them on Monday and then one set on Wednesday. Um, and then on their off days, they're going to continue working, but there's some online supplements and discussion that they do. And, um, and back in the spring, us as faculty, we had a chance to talk about it and share ideas. And I talked with quite a few people outside of this university about what they're doing in Texas as well as beyond Texas, links that I have back in Illinois and Missouri. And it was kind of like saying, well, how you're dealing with this? What do you plan on doing with that? And um, the university came up with a plan to still have class. But they
Mm-hmm.
also came up with a plan to do that. They have to have less people in a room, and we need to make sure that we're cleaning. Everyone's wearing these. So the only time I'm not wearing it is like right now, honestly, that if I walk outside to go to the restroom or anywhere down the hallway, this is what I have. But we're doing a lot in the university, and one part of that is to keep the numbers down. And so
Yeah.
we have a hybrid set. Luckily, we're also given the freedom of how we want to treat that hybrid. And some faculty, they're doing one where they meet every student every class period, but only for an hour and a half. And mine, because of what I'm teaching, I veered more towards meet them for 3 hours, but once a week.
Mm-hmm.
So you get different versions of that, that treatment. But it is difficult because it's sort of like, well, how can you fit everything from 2 days into now halftime? And that's
Yeah.
where the online supplement comes in. And I've been trying to do a lot of demos that I talked about. And it's a little bit different, but kind of thinking of it as well. If I'm sitting there one-on-one with a student, what kind of things would they see over my shoulder if I'm drawing out their project? That's kind of the approach. And then putting videos online, using online discussion. We got Zoom, of course. So there's a lot of those rattling around, and it really just depends on the class.
Yeah.
Yeah. But someone's going to come out of this, and it's going to be someone who has this great idea. Like, we're going to write the textbook about how to deal with all of this, and they're gonna strike it rich.
Maybe
The post-COVID
it's you.
teaching textbook.
Post-COVID. Okay.
They've got it figured out.
Oh, all right, Jason. I think I have like one last question. I think it's gonna be like a two-parter.
Okay.
You're like, oh my gosh. Are you? It's not even two-part. It's more like a same thing, but only more micro, more specific. So I want, what is some advice that you can give to, I don't even think it's gonna be a two-part. It might just be one, that you can give to someone that is either your age, older, younger, that is either related to art or life, or something that you feel that has helped you throughout your lifetime, right? Like, what is a good kernel of advice that you could give to someone? Doesn't have to pertain to art, but maybe it might be something that you feel works within the realm of art, or you feel this works in general to making you a happier or a more positive person. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I want to make sure I answer this correctly, or if there's just one answer. I don't know. Advice. I think it's, I think if I had to give advice to one person, I would tell them don't just listen to me if I'm the one person. Seek out advice from other people. Get as much advice as you can from everyone, but also it's okay to trust your own advice. I think as we look to others so much, we're looking at others to help us think. Oh, I'm watching the news, and the news told me I should feel this way, or I'm talking to my friend, and they're influencing how I think. And I think those are all fine. I think it's great to look all around for truth and information. Because I think that's, as artists, we're always trying to do that. We're always trying to find truth, and then package that into what we make. This is how I feel. This is really important to me, and then you make a time capsule out of it.
Okay.
Being a painting, sculpture, graphic design, and what have you. But I think that idea of truth is one that, if you only listen to one individual, you're getting such a narrow, blinds are on. You're not getting the full scope of how you feel. And I think it's a matter of switching to the other channels and saying, well, this is what I do feel. It's because I've heard all the answers. And to think of the truth as being that thing that is still there even after you've seen other people's truths. Was that okay?
That was great. Jason, that was the seeking.
I was really afraid I was going to mess that up, so I'm glad you're okay with that.
Seeking multiple chains of wisdom through other, just getting more perspectives, right? Is what you're trying to say, or at least that's how I'm seeing it. So
and to know that sometimes your perspective is as valid as others, because sometimes you hear loud voices. And they can sometimes populate, but to kind of find your inner truth.
Jason, where can people find you?
Where can people find me?
Right here.
I'm always on the internet. No, I'm not. I'm not good at interneting. So I have a website, and I do need to update it. So one way you can find me is go to jasonbly.com, and you'll have some of my work there, a little bit about myself. You can find me on Facebook. And so if you're already looking at this, you're probably already aware of that. J Bly Art, Instagram. Again, I'm trying to catch up on that one because I think it's one I've seen my students do it, and it's like, you know what? They're kicking my butt at that. I need to up my game on some of the social media.
You need to post your photos on there.
I do. I did post my photos today.
Awesome.
As of now, I'm like part of the 21st century.
You're like, I'm doing it right now, Matt.
Done.
Okay.
And where else? I have a show. I have a show coming up. If those that are willing to come down to Wichita Falls, Texas, I'm going to be showing at the Kemp Center for the Arts at the end of October. And I also have work in our faculty show. So I show, but right now it's been more regional rather than national because shipping and driving work out is just not happening right now.
Yeah, if everyone hears this and they go to Wichita, Texas, Wichita Falls,
Wichita Falls, and it's like 2 hours north.
And then they might see you snooping around and like a little get up with a mustache and glasses, right?
Yeah, I'll look just like you, and that's how you know that you found me. Is I look just like Matt.
Hearing what they had to say about your work. Okay, Jason, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your day and talking to me about your work, talking to me about your life. Really getting to know you. It's been I think it's been a really good experience. I learned a lot more than I expected, and I learned some things that were really quite interesting. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you, and hope it's good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. For those that are watching, please subscribe. You will help me so much if you subscribe. I do artist interviews every week, or so far every week. I may not do one during Thanksgiving week and Christmas week and during the week of Christmas and New Year's. I don't know yet. We'll see what happens. But please hit the subscribe button, and thank you so much for watching and taking time out of your day to watch me and Jason talk it out. Everyone have a wonderful day. Goodbye.